Okay guys, whenever we write code, especially HTTP calls, we need to make sure that we handle any possible exceptions that may occur. So in this video, let us handle the HTTP errors and exceptions in our Angular application. Now, just like the map operator that can be used to convert data to the desired format, we can also have a catch operator that works on an observable, and that is used to handle exceptions. So first thing, just like how we import map operator, let's import the catch operator. So from RxJS add operator catch. Now we can go ahead and add the catch operator on the observable. So like .map, we're going to say .catch. Now the argument to this catch operator is a method, and I'm going to call this method as error handler. So basically this is the method that gets executed when there is an error or an exception. Now I have the catch operator defined. Let's go ahead and define the error handler method. So underscore error handler. Now this error handler takes in the response object as its argument. Now this gets executed only when there is an error. So I'm going to call the response object as error. So we have error of type response. Now what do we want to do with the error? Now of course you would have something like a logging service which is going to log all the exceptions for you, maybe in a file, and then you can visit the file later on to check what the exceptions were. But for now we're just going to log to the console what the error is. And I want the error message in red font, so instead of console.log I'm going to use console.error, and I'm going to pass the error. And then now if you notice, our service doesn't have any view, so there is no HTML, but when there is an exception, we need to inform to the user that something has gone wrong with the application, or else they might just think that the data loading is taking a lot of time. So from a good user experience point of view, we need to display an appropriate message in the view. So what we need to do is throw this exception onto the components so that we can handle it there. So for that, I'm going to say return observable.throw, and then what are we throwing? If the error is not null, we throw the error. If it is null, we're just going to say server error. Now we have the red squiggly because we need to import it. So first is import observable, and this we are going to import from rxjs/observable. And then for throw, we need to import rxjs/add/observable/throw. Alright, so it's going to say, did you mean instance this dot? Yep, I did mean this dot. Alright, so now we are handling the exception in our service, and we are throwing it onto employee list and employee detail. So let's go ahead and handle it over there. So I'm going to go to employee list component, and if you notice here, we have subscribed. Now the subscribe method, the first argument gets executed when valid data is returned from the observable. So if I get some data, I'm going to call that as response employee data, and then I'm assigning to employees. Now similarly, if it is not valid data that got returned, instead it was error, then the second argument gets executed, and the second argument is an arrow function as well. So let's call this response employee error, and then we're just going to assign this to a variable. So I'm going to create a message, or I'm going to create a variable pretty soon. I'm going to call this dot error message is equal to response employee error. Now we need to define this error message, so I'm going to say error message of type string. Alright, so let's save this, and now we have whatever the error message was, we have assigned it to this variable, and we need to display it in the view. So I'm going to use an h3 tag, And I'm going to use interpolation to bind that value to the view. So error message, and then close the h3 tag. So now let's go ahead and do the same in employee detail component. So I'm going to copy this. Let's go over to employee detail, and then I'm going to put a comma and then say response employee error, and then also going to define this error message. And let's go ahead and display over here as well in the view. So h3, and over here we're going to bind error message. So let's save this, and we do have an error. Declaration of statement. Alright, so I'm gonna have to close this. Yep. Yeah, so that should work. Now let's save this and have a look at our browser, and it's working fine. Yep, it's working fine. And what I'm gonna do is to create an exception. I'm gonna go ahead and change this URL. Now right now we have this employee data.json with the 5 employee data. But I'm going to change the URL such that this is employee data1.json. So I'm going to save this, and let's see what happens. Now the GET request failed, and the error message was response with status 404 not found for URL http localhost 3000 API data / employee data1.json. Now of course this was the exception that was returned, but you can go ahead and send in any error message that you want to, depending on the exception. So let me quickly summarize this. The first thing we need to do is over here we need to catch any possible exception. So catch operator is imported and then attached to the observable. Now the catch operator takes in a method which is nothing but an error handling method as its argument. Now the error handler gets executed. It takes in an error or the response object as its argument. Now what we are doing is we are logging to the console the error, and then we are throwing the error so that the components can catch them and display it in the view. So in the different components, the first argument to the subscribe method is any data or any valid data that was returned. The second function gets executed when there was an error in the observable. So what happens here? Now, of course, you can name this anything you want to, but just to make it logically sensible, I have named it response employee error, and then I assign it to error message, and then I display it in the view. So now we have that error message in the view. And if I open the console, there we go, failed to load resource. The server responded with a status of 404, and it gives us more information on this error object. So that's pretty much how you handle errors and exceptions with HTTP, and that should cover services and HTTP in Angular. Next, let's have a look at routing. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, follow me on GitHub, and I'll see you guys in the next video.